Welcome to the Cosmic Chosen Channel. They should have known better than to underestimate the quiet one in the room. The one who observed, absorbed, and stayed 3 steps ahead while they laughed. But life has a way of flipping the script in real time. The whispers, the mockery, the dismissals. They've turned into frantic whispers, racing pulses, and sudden regret. The truth is, they always felt your power. They just prayed you'd never feel it yourself. According to psychology, people often don't value someone until they can no longer access them. And that's exactly what's happening. You're not just distant now, you've ascended. And the very ones who pretended you were irrelevant, they're now watching in shock as your name begins to surface in places they never expected, including the global stage. Because in 3 days, someone with reach, someone with power, is going to say your name out loud. Not in private, not in secret, but on the record, for the whole world to hear. And the moment it happens, everything changes. This isn't about revenge, it's about recognition. They always knew. They just didn't want you to. Now it's too late. And the irony? It's not just their silence that's deafening, it's your elevation. You weren't just in the story, you were the plot twist. First of all, they only saw the mirror of their own fears and never you. You weren't ignored because you weren't unique. You caused them discomfort, so they disregarded you. They were alarmed that you didn't fit into the mold they had in mind. In actuality, they saw your potential, but chose to act as though you didn't exist. They saw too much of themselves in you and didn't like the comparison, not that you were lacking anything. You made individuals face what they weren't every time you entered a room. They silently wished they had your drive, depth, and fortitude. However, many felt exposed rather than motivated. They weren't prepared to accept their own inadequacies, not that you weren't good enough. What's the simplest method to handle that? Pretend you're not a danger, minimize you, and ignore you. Consider how often you were treated as though you were invisible, despite the fact that you contributed something worthwhile. Although they listened to your suggestions, they rejected them. They didn't acknowledge your efforts, because doing so would have meant acknowledging their own mediocrity, not because they didn't think you were brilliant. But now that you're becoming unquestionable, they're not sure how to deal with it, because you continued moving forward and changing. The remorse is killing them, and they can't ignore you any longer. They understand that they ought to have helped you, acknowledged you, and treated you differently. However, they squandered time by underestimating the one who was supposed to outgrow them. They were too preoccupied with avoiding their own reflection to see you back then. Now, though, they have now been forced to acknowledge the fact that you were the one the entire time, despite their best efforts to act differently. The second is that they held you close to regulate your light, not because they loved you, not because they detested you, but rather because they were afraid of losing power. Some individuals never wanted to see you succeed. Instead of encouraging you, they made sure you stayed near enough for them to watch you, but never far enough for you to outgrow them, since they saw your potential long before you did. Under the guise of encouragement, they kept you around while really preventing you from realizing your full potential. They never gave you enough confidence, but they did give you enough to keep you from leaving. Because they could maintain their position above you as long as you doubted yourself. They wanted you in their circle to control you rather than to elevate you. Consider this. How many times did they minimize your victories? How often did they cause you to doubt yourself? It never happened by accident. They were frightened by whatever they saw in you. They recognized the brilliance, the fire, and the tenacity. And they understood that if you ever fully grasped your potential, you would turn into something they couldn't manage. Although they referred to it as advice, it was actually discouragement disguised as worry. They offered you backhanded compliments that were just subtle enough to make you question yourself, and they pretended to be on your side while telling you to be realistic, which was actually a way of saying, "Don't outshine me." Now that you're awake, though, it's striking them like bricks. Despite the deception, you took control of your situation. They are now in a frenzy. They no longer have the same control. They seeded doubts in you, but they didn't take hold. And to make matters worse, you no longer require them. The fact that they are unable to contact the person they attempted to keep at bay is what scares them the most. Number 3, your hardships were your refining, not a punishment. There was no punishment for you. You weren't being treated unfairly by life. You were being prepared for something greater by the hardships you endured. They weren't arbitrary. However, it felt like you were being pulled through hell pointlessly since you were not yet aware of the whole picture. Life appeared to keep hitting you down no matter how hard you tried, while others seemed to have it easier. You were unaware that your struggles served as a training ground. You were becoming stronger as a result of every setback, rejection, and betrayal. The universe was ensuring that you were prepared, not working against you. Because of the type of power you possess, it must be earned. It cannot be given to anybody. Consider the individuals who had everything handed to them and who never had to deal with true hardship. Now, where are they? Because they were never designed to resist strain, the majority of them fall apart the moment life becomes difficult. However, you were forced to develop resilience. Without a safety net, you had to deal with suffering, loss, and disappointment. You're unstoppable now. Those who questioned you believed that you were weak and suffering. You were, nevertheless, being fortified in ways they can never comprehend. You were being polished while they were becoming settled. They are now seeing that they lack the mental, emotional, and spiritual fortitude to deal with their own difficulties. However, you do, since you've already survived the fire and emerged stronger. It all makes sense now that you're taking charge of your life. You understand why certain things didn't work out, why some people left, and why you had to put up with so much. It was always preparation rather than punishment. The same individuals who formerly denigrated you are now acknowledging that they could never have made it through what you endured. Fourth, their defection was their last desperate deed and was not a mistake. Those who were closest to you, those who grinned in your face, feigned support, and appeared as though they had your back, are the ones who betray you, not your adversaries. However, they were observing, anticipating, and planning the entire time. They witnessed your development and tenacity, and they were aware that they would fall behind once you fully realized your potential. They were frightened by that. Thus, rather of applauding you, they made a final desperate attempt to shatter you. They were dishonest. They obstructed. They misrepresented stories. They attempted to incite people to oppose you. In the hopes that it might discolor you sufficiently to slow you down, they put dirt over your name. The fact is that they had no other choice except to betray you. Thus, it wasn't an accident. This was their final attempt to control your fate, because all previous attempts to keep you little had failed. The mistake they made, though, was assuming you needed them. They believed that by isolating you, alienating others, and attempting to damage your reputation, you would fall apart. They thought they could control you. They were unaware, however, that treachery was your breakthrough rather than your breaking point. It liberated you rather than destroyed you. Who was real and who wasn't was exposed. You grew stronger than ever as a result of being forced to stand alone. You didn't just survive, you flourished, and now it's striking them like bricks. You were just made closer to your destiny by all they attempted to thwart you. And what's worst for them? The fact that they played themselves is something they must accept. Instead of standing by your side, they turned themselves into the antagonists in a tale in which you were destined to prevail. Fifth, they didn't desire you until they realized how much you were admired by others. It's strange how people's opinions of you may alter depending on who is watching, not on who you are. They ignored you, disregarded you, and treated you as an afterthought when they believed you to be just another regular person. However, they instantly remembered your name the moment they witnessed others complimenting you. All of a sudden, people show you respect. All of a sudden, they want to see you once again. Let's face it, though, they never really questioned you. They didn't want to admit it until the world made them, but they always knew you had something unique. They were too conceited, too naive, or too insecure to recognize it for themselves, not because you weren't valued before. They thus waited for external confirmation and for someone else to point out what was already clear to them. Now that you no longer need them, it's striking them like bricks. There is no longer the version of you that yearned for their acceptance. They want to return after witnessing others applauding you, standing with you, and realizing what they previously disregarded. However, they fail to see an important fact. They can no longer reach you. People who arrive late to the celebration are not rewarded. Those who required a reminder that they were valuable are not welcome back. Before you were in the spotlight, real people recognized your worth. They were there while you were still constructing, still working things out, still in the trenches. The ones that arrive now, they are here for what you have become, not for you. The problem is that they made their decision. They didn't stand by your side when they could have. They want to act as though they've always supported you now that you're on the rise. However, it's too late. They may now observe from the sidelines because they didn't want you until the world did. Sixth, you served as the model, and others ridiculed you while stealing your ideas. They rejected you, laughed at you, and even referred to you as insane. They won't tell you, though, that they were taking notes all while. They acted as though your ideas were absurd, yet they were secretly observing, researching, and stealthily taking. You were the original source, the blueprint, and the first to see the vision before anybody else did. And until they saw that you were correct, they made fun of you rather than standing by you. They first made fun of you because they were intimidated by your ideas. You had a viewpoint they couldn't comprehend, and you moved and thought differently. They rejected you as unrealistic, rather than acknowledging that they lacked the same insight. They only prayed that no one else would notice it until they could find out how to claim it as their own. But they knew deep down that you were onto something. They are now being struck hard because they are attempting to make money off of the exact thing they attempted to stifle. What they took from you was the cornerstone of their success. They are prospering from your vision, but they are unable to completely appreciate it, as they know in their hearts that they did not create it. Knowing that the person they made fun of is the same person they secretly looked to for inspiration means they must live with the guilt. However, the reality always comes full circle. Stolen things never last. Because its basis was based on imitation rather than innovation, it is weak, and their mask is coming off as you keep getting higher, and people begin to see where the ideas really originated. They cannot deny that they benefited from your genius while also harboring doubts about you. They believed that by claiming credit for your vision, They might undo your influence, but they fail to see that you are the original creator. And they will never be you, no matter how much they strive to be like you. Seventh, you were being concealed for a greater good, not discarded. Rejection served as protection rather than a curse. The world was keeping you hidden until the appropriate time, not because it was cruel. People weren't permitted to notice your grandeur, not that they didn't see it, because you would have been besieged by people who merely wanted to take advantage of you if you had been identified too soon. Consider this: how many lives have been destroyed by untimely success? Their big break came too soon, before they had a firm grasp on who they were and could tell who was real and who wasn't, and what took place. They were devoured. Before they had an opportunity to completely embody their goal, they lost themselves, trusted the wrong people, and fell into the wrong circles. You weren't going to experience it. You were destined to maintain your success, not just achieve it. You would have been surrounded by opportunists, manipulators, and people who just regarded you as a resource if you had been hailed before you were ready. You would have been exhausted, distracted, and perhaps even derailed by them. Therefore, the universe kept you hidden, out of sight and silent, not to punish you, but to protect you. And now that you're coming out, you're unstoppable, so it's striking them like bricks. You are aware of who you are. You are aware of who is genuine and who is not. Additionally, you are pursuing your goals free from the burden of phony backing, coerced alliances, or parasites masquerading as allies. At one point, many questioned why you weren't receiving your chance. They believed that you were unworthy, unlucky, and unprepared. They were unaware, however, that your timing was always deliberate. Instead of rejection, you were being purified. Nothing and no one can stop what was always meant for you now that it's your time. Number 8. They are really guilty about their decision to prioritize comfort above development. While you were trying, failing, and rebuilding, their life appeared to be easier, so they believed they were winning. They were at ease. They avoided anything that involved actual risk, played things safe, and stuck to their tried and true routines. They also made fun of you at the time. They asked themselves, why put yourself through all that? After witnessing your sacrifices, late nights, and disappointments, but now they're feeling the full force of it. Because you changed while they remained the same. You welcomed difficulties while they shunned them. You ventured into the unknown while they remained in their comfort zone. They are now understanding that the same things that made you successful were the ones they fled from: development, hardship, and uncertainty. In actuality, they were laughing to cover up their own nervousness rather than because they were confident in you. They secretly admired your bravery. They hoped they were brave enough to take chances, to wager on themselves, to challenge themselves. However, they persuaded themselves that it was better to play it safe. And they're stuck now. They perceive stasis in their lives, the same unrealized potential, the same mentality, and the same routines. You're outgrowing everything they believed was unachievable in the meanwhile. They are no longer able to ignore it. They can no longer claim that their approach was superior because your achievement is now disproving their claims. That guilt, too? They know they had the same opportunities as you, which is why it's weighty. They had equal access to opportunities and the same number of hours in a day. The sole distinction? They were too afraid to pursue what you were prepared to fight for. Right now, they're trapped where they've always been, watching you ascend. They also realize in their hearts that things didn't have to be this way. Number 9. You're stronger without them now, even if they never believed you would recover. They believed they had permanently damaged you. They believed that the suffering they inflicted would leave you paralyzed by self-doubt and unable to go on. They thought that you would get weaker without them, that you would miss them every day, need their approval, and long for them to come back. However, they made a mistake, because you healed rather than remained damaged. You rebuilt instead of falling apart. They are frightened by the fact that you are stronger than before. You see, they never genuinely desired your departure. They wanted you to stay in the version of yourself that was dependent on them, the one who doubted your own value, accepted less, and put up with their abuse. They believed that their mind tricks, treachery, or desertion would cause irreversible harm. However, they were unaware that your suffering was actually your rebirth rather than your demise. Not only did healing aid in your recovery, but it also improved your vision. You can now see through their attempts to keep you under them, their manipulation, and their meaningless statements. The fog has dissipated. You are able to identify the mind games for what they were: guilt-tripping, gaslighting, and covert attempts to minimize you. You are no longer the same person who put up with it. Thus, it no longer works. You no longer need them. And that's what's striking them like a ton of bricks. They no longer have the same influence on you. People who just ever desired control are no longer the source of your need for closure. People who feigned not to understand you no longer need your explanations. Wounds that don't belong to you are no longer with you. They are now the ones who are grieving because, even if you have moved on from them, they remain the same, trapped in their habits, seeing your success and understanding too late that the person they attempted to destroy is now untouchable. Number 10. Your development serves as a mirror, making people confront their own lack of advancement. Their anger is directed at themselves, not at you. However, they choose to vent their displeasure on you rather than acknowledge that. They are reminded of all they failed to achieve each time you ascend, level up, or demonstrate that improvement is achievable. And it's a difficult pill to take. See, when everyone around you is stationary, it's simple to come up with excuses. When nobody is going above and beyond their comfort zone, it's simple to defend being cautious. But then you arrived. You continued to develop, learn, and grow, while others remained in the same place. They are now unable to overlook the difference between their current selves and their potential selves. Your achievement is revealing as well as inspirational. They used to minimize your accomplishments, mock your aspirations, and scoff at your ambition, not because they truly believed you were insane, but rather because it made them feel better about achieving nothing. They persuaded themselves that some individuals are just lucky, that change is too difficult, and that success is unattainable. Now, though, you've now demonstrated that it wasn't chance, but rather self-control, selflessness, and a refusal to settle for less. And that's what's slamming into them, because they were making excuses while you were taking chances. They were squandering time while you were investing in yourself. The disparity is now indisputable. They didn't use your progress as incentive, though, since they would have to acknowledge that they had the same chances and had squandered them if they acknowledged that you had earned your success. Thus, people project since it's the simplest option. Because it's simpler than confronting their own immobility, they find ways to minimize your trip, calling you lucky, conceited, or changed. However, what is the reality? They stayed where they were. You didn't abandon them. Number 11. Although they believed they could change the story, the reality is now indisputable. To improve their own image, they believed they could change history, distort the facts, and control the narrative. The idea that they helped you succeed, that they advised you, or even that you owed them something was what they wanted others to think. They made an effort to hide the conflict, the betrayals, and the times they made fun of you in private. The issue with falsehoods, however, is that they are incompatible with reality. They were first believed by some. Perhaps they presented themselves as the ones who always had faith in your ability to succeed. Perhaps they attempted to persuade others that they were your staunchest allies. Some even dared to claim to have contributed to the creation of what you did. But now that the truth is undeniable, everything is falling apart. Your path is the evidence. The way they handled you is remembered. They recall how they discussed you while you were having difficulties. They recall the skepticism, the aside remarks, and the contemptuous demeanor. They are scurrying now. They're coming to the realization that your accomplishment speaks louder than any attempt to change the past. The fact that they cannot claim credit for something they never believed in is what is striking them like a ton of bricks. When it counted, they weren't on your side. When you needed help, they didn't provide it. They realize they weren't a part of the voyage, but they fervently want to be a part of the result. So now that you've arrived, their guilt is choking them. They made a mistake, though, because your progress occurred despite them rather than because of them. And the truth will always prevail, regardless of how much they attempt to change the past. The instant they made the decision to question you, they lost their position in your tale, and they now have to live with that regret. Number 12. They will always regret how they treated you. They assumed you would always be present. They believed that you would never go even if they ignored you, dismissed you, or took you for granted. They thought they could treat you any way they wanted and still have your presence, your commitment, and your energy. Since they lost something rare and cannot get it back, it is now striking them like bricks. You see, people don't value you when they believe they can reach you at will. They believe that you will continue to show up, extend forgiveness, and wait for them to recognize your value. They thought you were weak because you were kind. They believed they could try their luck because of your forbearance. They never understood, however, that they were the issue, not you. And since you leveled up instead of simply walking away, remorse is now eating them alive. You recovered. You developed. When they had the opportunity, you transformed into everything they couldn't see in you. They are now unable to avoid the world they created for themselves. They made a mistake that cannot be undone. The worst thing? They perceive that you are now valued by others. They witness your success without them. They witness someone else appreciating the exact attributes they disregarded. And because it's too late, the remorse becomes intolerable at that point. The past cannot be changed. They are unable to reverse their errors. They cannot go back and treat you in a different manner. They were mistaken to believe that you would always be an option. They must now bear the burden of knowing that they lost something unique, not as a result of your actions, but rather of their treatment of you. And remorse like that? It never goes away. 13. You turned into what they've always desired to be, but were too scared to go for. Although they won't acknowledge it, they have always secretly respected you for the bravery it required to get there as much as for what you have accomplished. They saw you overcome the constraints they were too scared to question because of the way you moved differently, the chances you took while others played it safe, and the fact that you refused to compromise yourself to please others. And they were angry with you for it rather than supporting you. The fact is, though, that it was never about you. Their own unrealized potential was the source of their annoyance, jealousy, and disparaging remarks. What they hoped they had in themselves, they saw in you. They desired to be audacious. They desired to have no fear. They desired to pursue a more ambitious goal. However, they were hesitant when it came time to take that jump. Comfort was their choice. Security was their choice. They decided on terror. And now, seeing you succeed serves as a heartbreaking reminder of what might have been, since you demonstrated that it was feasible. You disproved the justifications they used for their own inactivity. After witnessing you generate possibilities out of nothing, they are unable to convince themselves that success is reserved for a select few. When you've already done it, they can't say it's impossible. And that insight? They're being struck like bricks by it. You see, individuals may either be inspired or resentful when they don't follow their aspirations. And far too many people opt for resentment. They question, who does this person think they are? Rather than, how can I grow too? They use your trip as an excuse to destroy you rather than as a source of inspiration because it's simpler to be angry with you than to confront their own concerns. The problem is that they made their decision. They were able to fulfill their objective and had the same 24 hours. They simply didn't. They must now face the fact that you have become everything they were too scared to pursue. Number 14. Your accomplishments demonstrate that you never need their approval. They believed that the secret to your success was their approval. They thought you wouldn't succeed if they disregarded you, had doubts about you, and didn't stand behind you. They thought you would give up, remain little, or crawl back to get their approval if you didn't have it. But now that you have shown them to be completely mistaken, it's striking them like bricks. You flourished, not simply succeeded. Without their help, without their support, and without their consent, you created yourself from the ground up. And the fact that they can no longer act as though they were an essential component of your trip makes that truth painful. You were the key, never them. You see, some individuals feel powerful because they think they have influence over who wins and who loses. They make the decisions on who is promoted and who is fired. And they believed the narrative was done when they decided to ignore you. They believed you would be deterred by their silence. However, they overlooked the fact that you were never seeking their approval in the first place. Now, your success is a smack in the face because you're succeeding without them, not because you're winning. The authority they believe they have over you? Lost. That you were in need of them? Broken. The idea that your value was based on their approval? Destroyed beyond recognition. What's the worst? They are aware that they might have participated in the trip. They had the opportunity to stand by you, encourage you, and congratulate you. But they opted for uncertainty instead. They decided to keep quiet. They decided to observe and wait to see if you would fail. They now have to accept the reality that you didn't. You never required them, as evidenced by your achievement. However, it's possible that they needed you, and it's too late now. The truth constantly comes to light in the end. Every doubt they expressed, every instance in which they disregarded you, and every attempt to diminish your value all backfired. Because you are now unstoppable and indisputable, and as they see the exact person they missed become into someone they can no longer contact, they are left to wallow in their own remorse. To be clear, though, this was never about disproving them. Being who you were always intended to be was the key to your success, not seeking retribution. They never possessed the strength they believed they did. They were only a transient barrier and background noise. In actuality, they were only unaware of the power that was already within you and never had any influence over your fate. Now that they are sitting in their remorse, you go on. No resentment, no turning back, simply progress. Because you were never intended to remain in the past. Rather, you were always designed to rise, flourish, and assert your authority without seeking their consent. Allow them to feel the consequences of their loss. Allow them to accept that they handled something uncommon incorrectly, and that it is now permanently lost. Because of you? This is only the beginning. Don't keep this message to yourself if it resonated with you. Share the truth. Press the like button. Tell me which aspect most resonated with you by leaving a comment below. You won't want to miss what's coming next, so if you're prepared for more enlightening stuff that speaks to your soul rather than simply your ears, be sure to subscribe and enable your alerts. Finally, spread the word about this. This message is just as important to someone else as it was to you. Today, be the catalyst for their aha moment. Together, let's develop.